Good morning. This is the August 16th, 2018 meeting of the Downtown Design Review Committee. If everybody would take a moment to silence their cell phones. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Nathaniel Harding, Anthony Blatt,
Present.
Charles Ainsworth, Corey Bates, Julie Kriegel, and Deborah Richards. You have a quorum.
Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. The minutes were included in your packet. If there aren't any comments on the minutes, I would entertain a motion.
Move to accept the minutes.
That is a
Second, Deborah.
Kriegel and Richards. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is cases withdrawn, and there are none.
We do actually have.
Staff actually has a case that we need to withdraw, which is CE 973 that's on your agenda. Additional information was provided yesterday morning that has documented that the easements in question have already been closed decades ago, and so there is no need for action by this committee, so staff request that this be withdrawn.
So we don't need action on it.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly.
We're just reporting to you that we are withdrawing.
Thank you. Okay. Item number 4, continuance requests, and there are none. Items on the consent docket, item number 5, and there are none. Item number 6 is cases for individual consideration. Item number DTCA 1800074 at 100 North Broadway Avenue. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Would you like
They're
to set up
sitting in the
case?
front row.
Would you like to set up the case?
Sure. This is I'm not sure how you all think of this building, if it's Cotter Ranch Tower or Chase Tower. I'm assuming we're going to start referring to it as the Bank First Tower. We have a new owner for the building, and they're coming through for some significant revisions, not only to the lower part of the building, new signage at the top, but the whole plaza is going to be totally taken out and redone. There were only, it's a big project, and there was only 2 items in which I'm thankful for. They did a great job that we need to bring up to you that were in the amended staff report that you received. One deals with signage, and the other deals with a guideline. So the signage one is a regulation. For buildings that are taller than 250 feet, there's an additional signage permitted, which is the table that you're seeing before you here. And this building is 500 foot tall. So they could have an additional 750 square foot per face for the signage that they want to put up at the top. In looking at and let me scroll all the way to the end, which is where we put those. In looking at the signage that they want to put up there, they had one of the issues was with the font that's used. I mean, it's their signature font. Yes, it's 500 foot up in the air. It's not for the pedestrians. You can see it from 235, as most of you know when you drive that area. And so this option 1 is 750 square feet. And so you can see how it's going to fit on, this is the new mesh that they're going to be putting up at the top. And option 2, whoops, and that's option 1. So option 2 is you can see how it's the height. Yes, there's a difference in height, but I think what's more dramatic is the difference in the width of the sign. And as I stated in the staff report, it really, to me, feels more proportional, the bigger sign. This one kind of gets lost up there. So staff has provided you both of those. We are recommending, if you are supportive of option 2, which is the larger one that will need a variance, that you actually approve both options. And the reason we're recommending that is if they go to the September Board of Adjustment meeting, 6th Board of Adjustment meeting, they're on that schedule, and it doesn't get approved we want them to already have that other sign approved and not to have to come back to you. And so that's why the recommendations at the end of the staff report kind of look a little unusual. So on to the second thing that I need to discuss with you is currently when you walk, and I'm trying to get back to the pictures, when you walk around, you have the sidewalk. This is the sidewalk on the south, and it literally is open all the way to the building. So the plaza just flows into the sidewalk. So if you're ever there for anything going on, and one of the things I talked when I was dealing with the architects was, I think it was a Baptist convention that was within the last few months, and I had the misfortune of trying to get to Broadway here, and there was this convergence of people. They must have been parking in the Santa Fe garage, and there were people everywhere. And so what they were literally, the sidewalk became the sidewalk in the plaza, and so it can accommodate a lot of people. And when you look at the proposal, and and this is that area we were talking about, they're proposing planters here where the hand is, down on the property line, that have 2 access walkways up to the building, which they're just finishing up Project 180 in that area. The work down here on Main Street is done, and so they have all of the tree wells, the trees are in, and so at those locations, your sidewalk becomes narrower. Now, acknowledging that it's their property, we want people, like if they were building a new building and they came to us and wanted to build on the property line, that's what we want to see. And so it's kind of it was a difficult discussion to come up with in the staff report, but it was a legitimate concern staff had about the functionality of the pedestrian way by necking it down with those planters. So staff wanted to, and here's the close-up, and you can see the actual tree wells, and it's this area in here. Now, granted, the tree wells, people can actually walk because it's not grass, it's the gravel or the crushed up, the granite. So people will walk in that. Obviously, you don't want to walk into the tree, but you see people walk on that all the time. We do it in front of our building. So I just wanted to mention that. So in the staff report at the end, you see we have a recommendation of approval with 2 conditions. Staff is requesting that the applicant move the planters that are adjacent to the south property line, the ones we were just talking about, a minimum of 3 foot to the north so that we increase the functionality of the sidewalk, as well as the applicant receives a variance from the maximum sign area regulations, and that's for option 2, which is the bigger sign. The second thing, if you recommend the variance, is obviously we need to recommend approval to the Board of Adjustment for the variance. I'm done.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. If you'd state your name.
Yeah, David Harlow, CEO of BankFirst Corporation, and pleased to be here this morning. First of all, I wanted to thank, really through our architects, thank the staff. This has been a kind of a breakneck pace project, and staff has been great to work with to help us kind of get through this. Timeline has been short for a variety of reasons. One, the building's actually in bankruptcy in a court in the San Antonio bankruptcy court. So we're working through that. And we, in our bid, we're pretty aggressive on our due diligence timeline and closing, which was obviously a benefit to us, but it also caused some heartache for staff and for our architects. We pulled them through a knothole to really get something quickly that we could make an assessment as to whether or not we wanted to move forward with the project. So thanks to the staff, thanks to you guys. I know you all are volunteers and appreciate your interest in the project and also your work on behalf of the city. So this is an exciting project for us. We office right across the street. This is, as you know, well, maybe you don't know, but the building's got quite a bit of deferred maintenance that needs to be done. We're going to be an owner-occupant We will occupy probably 30 to 40% of the building. Haven't done all our space planning yet. So we're going to spend a lot of money that an investor probably would not. This is going to be our home. We're moving people from out of the central business district into the central business district, in addition to moving people across the street. So we want to make sure that it is done right, and again, we're probably going to spend quite a bit more than an investor would. As it relates to the variances, we also support what the staff recommends. Option 1 really does not work for us from the signage perspective. Option 2, you looked at the pictures, obviously, and from 235 and I-40, just visibility, it's really not, you aren't going to stand underneath the building and look up 36 floors. So another foot at 36 floors up doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of difference, but it does from a visibility perspective from I-40 and I-235, which is important to us. So I guess that would be my comments, unless architects have anything to add. Yeah, we'd be glad to answer any questions you have. It's an exciting project for us. I think an exciting one for the city. This is, if this were to get into not the right hands, you could end up with another Skirvin or another First National before too long, because the deferred maintenance over there, we've done our due diligence, and it is significant. So, it's 500,000 square feet, so there's a lot of work to be done. But we're excited about it. It's a great solution for us, and I think a great solution for the city.
Thank you very much. Do any of the committee members have comments?
I've got a list of questions to go through, but I'll start off by saying I think this is a great project too. I've been inside. I've seen the deferred maintenance firsthand that needs to happen within this building, and really this building's presence as part of Oklahoma City's skyline is has a strong significance and history to it. And so to see someone else come in and give it the TLC that it needs is just, I commend that. I've got, like I said, a couple questions to go through. And so I'll start, I guess I'll start overall, then go to the top, and then go to the ground level. The area of the building between the lobby and the top, is there any scope for renovation to the typical curtain wall or the concrete mullions?
Yes. There are several options. We had a curtain wall consultant come in that actually did the GE building, did the Devon building. They're out of Dallas to do some, and there's, as you can imagine, there are a variety of options. And it really goes hand in hand with the HVAC as well, because of the solar load that you can help. Those are single pane windows. So it's everything. We're evaluating everything from tinting the inside of the windows, which consistently throughout, I don't know if you look at it, I never spent a whole lot of time looking at it until now, but there are different tints. Like some people got aluminum foil in their windows, it looks like. But so we will do that at a minimum, but we are evaluating some other options that they gave us that are much more dramatic, as redoing the entire curtain wall. But that's something we haven't made that decision yet.
Okay.
But definitely at a minimum, we will tint the interior consistently throughout. And there's apparently some new product that's much better than what has been on the market before.
Is that part of this application?
I was going to say, as presented, they're not doing anything to the main body of the tower.
That's what I wanted to get to.
If there's anything else that they choose to do, it'll have to be covered.
Okay.
Except like ordinary maintenance, recalking, even perhaps repairing the window films doesn't need a CE.
Right.
Okay.
Like,
I mean, if the appearance, if they're changing the color or the appearance of the outside.
if there's a change in appearance, that there are provisions for people to repair damaged items that exist.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to clarify really what we are.
But it's a range of, A to Z.
Yeah.
And it's about that difference in cost, so.
Yeah, oh, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
But for today, that's
Right.
That's not part of our scope. So at the top of the building, cladding the exterior with the metal mesh and then hanging the sign on that. The height of the metal mesh, is that, where does the bottom of the mesh fall relative to the floors of the building? So is that mesh covering just the top?
I think it's the 36th floor, but I'm going to yield to the experts. I think it's basically the bottom of the, it's the mechanical, 36th floor is mechanical. It's got a couple of rooms the Petroleum Club has, but I think it's the depth of the 36th floor, isn't it? You wanna-
If you can identify yourself, please.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Colin Fleck with Bacchus Paint Architecture. We're taking it down to the head of the window of the Petroleum Club, so it'll stop just short so that we don't interrupt any of the views out of the Petroleum Club.
Okay, so it's one level?
Correct.
Okay, great. Okay, so then going down to the ground level, as we get into the site, there's a number of new raised planters. And if I understand correctly, some of those are going to be clad in Corten steel. Is that correct? Okay. What is going to be done to manage rain runoff on that Corten steel?
Well, I think, I'm going to probably yield to these guys for the gory details, but, you know, those planters today do leak down into the concourse and into the parking garage that's underneath the building. So we're going to tear the deck all the way off and reseal it. Now, as it relates to the drainage out of the planters, how's that work? Sure.
Bruce Bacchus, and with Bacchus Paint Architecture. So around each planter where the Corten is present, there'd be a drainage trough, so any water, rain that gets on there will be contained in that and won't bleed out onto the sidewalk.
Okay.
I'm sure that's what you're wanting us to address.
Yeah, that's the concern, is rain
Okay.
runoff will take that
Absolutely.
color onto the pavement. Great.
Yep.
Okay. Then could you speak to the lobby improvements, if you're doing any to the lobby itself, because the glass, as it's being presented, will be inherently clear.
Yes.
So the lobby walls will almost present themselves as an exterior expression.
Correct.
So if you could maybe talk about what's going on inside the lobby.
Well, the idea is to reactivate the lobby. I don't know if you've been through there lately, but there's not a whole heck of a lot going on. And the status, you know, as quickly as we were moving through this, we didn't have time to put kind of what the plans are for the lobby into the drawings. But our plan would be to in the northeast corner, to have, you know, a restaurant, food and beverage, coffee shop, and then we're going to move our security around to the front, open up to be able to see down into the concourse, a bigger, this is not an architectural term, but hole to look down into to be able to see up, to kind of orient yourself. And our banking, you know, we'll have our bank in both the concourse and to some degree probably in the lobby too. But that's, you know, that is to come, but you know, as far as activating the plaza level and the lobby, they kind of go together. And we want to bring life back to that, which is now basically just a place for people to smoke, it seems like.
It looks like the building core walls will be reclad with a new material.
The up 2 stories high, right? It's full two floors.
Yeah, that was my next question, because on
Yeah.
the south side right now, the ceiling is down at
Right.
that first level.
Right.
So that would be raised as well?
No, I think the plan at this point is to leave the second floor.
On the south side?
Yeah, it comes out, I don't know if it comes out to probably a little bit past the elevator banks to the north.
Yep.
The plan at this point is to leave the second floor. We
Okay.
looked at taking out the second floor, but I think at this point, the plan is to leave it.
So,
So the current thought and the direction where we're heading with it is that on that mezzanine level that right now is just kind of this big clunky mass hanging up there, we're removing all the walls and putting a glass system in similar to the exterior curtain wall. So it will become a glass box within the glass box, and that's where their conference center is going to be. So we want to create some life in the lobby in as much as possible, so connecting the mezzanine level visually with the lobby level is one of our goals.
Okay. Would you mind scrolling back to that perspective of the south side? Yeah, this one. So here, what we would see at that second level is conferencing space.
It'd be office and or conference.
Office.
We're talking about
Occupied
probably our
space.
board room and other meeting rooms on that second floor, because it's not a full footprint. It's kind of maybe 12,000 feet or something.
Okay.
Second floor.
That's great to hear, because right now it's just spandrel closed
Right.
off.
And it's all
So
closed off. And
getting that two-story experience all the way around
Yeah.
is great. As far as entering the lobby space, it looks like there's an entrance on the north, there are entrances on the east and west oriented to the south, and then one at the south.
Yes.
The entrance at the north is the only one shown on this plan to have a vestibule condition. Is there any reason not to provide vestibules on the other entrances?
As far, well,
If we go to the first floor plan?
y'all might.
This way. Bear with me.
And I ask because wind is a big concern.
This
But yeah, this plan, so the north shows a vestibule for some wind management, but the other three entrances do not. And right now, the current building doesn't have vestibules, but they do have revolving doors.
So one of the things we're trying to do by, expanding that entrance to the north is to make it the main entry. Right now, there's really no primary entry. People enter from wherever they like. One of the things we're going to do on the interior is actually block off the elevator core to the south and try and force people to use that primary entrance on the north. It's still up in the air about how we handle the vestibule, the airlock on the south, east, and west. So we could have an internal vestibule there, but we don't think that it should be projected out as a, hey, enter here. We're trying to actually make those go away a little bit more as far as the look on the outside.
Okay. Yeah, I think the wind needs to be addressed, and I don't know if you have or are considering potentially a wind study. There's a lot of high wind conditions currently with this building, and developing the site and putting in raised planters might help break that up. I don't know. I wouldn't know, but I would strongly suggest some kind of wind study that looks at that, because at the base of your building is where you're going to have the highest speed winds. And so I understand as far as trying to orient people to one entrance, and that'll work for the majority of the people, but you will have people going in and out of these doors, and it will put a strain on your HVAC system when you have extreme pressure drops opening a door that doesn't have a vestibule. So I would highly encourage considering vestibule conditions at those locations, if not revolving doors. I mean, the revolving door is, a single line solution that replicates a vestibule condition.
I know it's windy there because they finally gave up putting flags up. They just get beat up in about a week, and they just put them down.
It gets intense.
Yes, it does.
So, certainly, you're making such an investment into making this plaza a nicer place. I would hate to make that investment and have the wind conditions still prevent people from staying outside and enjoying it, or give them struggles coming in and out of the building. So So just thoughts as I've looked at this. Again, I think it's a great project. Appreciate the effort on everybody's part.
Yeah, I'm also really excited to see rehabilitation of this building and investment into it. But I have a few questions about the design of the lobby space, specifically the columns. I guess, there are guidelines saying that developers are encouraged to retain some of the historic character of a building. I understand this building was built in 1971. But I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about the reason to remove all of those existing columns and replace them with these new columns. And also, are these columns in the same setback from the facade? You're not moving. I see there's obviously less columns, but they're in the same general location as the existing ones. Okay.
I think we're removing every other one that's not load-bearing.
Okay.
Leaving they're staying where they are, just refacing them.
I see. So, and then these columns seem, they appear to be a lot thicker, and they don't have that kind of slender look, which I think, that kind of slender column also works really nicely with the facade design. So I'm curious to hear, why you chose to kind of go with this little bit more massive bottom floor. Or I guess I wouldn't necessarily call it massive, but it's kind of a very different look than the original building.
That sounds like an architectural question.
When we discovered, trying to find out what the building could give us to become a more modern statement, yet not ignore the existing building, we discovered that every other column was fake. And so we started our exploration with taking out every other column. And that looked pretty goofy, right, if we kept the existing ones. And then so we changed the column design, and we studied the proportion. Those columns are slender and they look good because of the spacing's tight. When we made the spacing more than twice as much as it is now, that level of slender looked way too slender. It didn't look right. And so it was important for us to keep it as slender as possible, yet still feel right with the spacing between columns. We would love to sit down with you with the SketchUp model and show you what a skinny column looks there, and it just wasn't right.
Yeah, I can imagine some that maybe have buildings, not a tower on top, but Lincoln Center in New York has very thin columns and really wide openings that are, that's a 50s building, so it's older than this, but in some ways kind of an architectural precedent for this kind of style. And so for me, I enjoy that kind of older historic character. This completely changes it. Given that I really want to encourage growth downtown and investment, I don't think, I'm willing to say no to this design, but I do think that's something really to look carefully at. And even also kind of the color choices. The building is probably a little bit more beige than what's shown in this rendering. I wonder if the mesh color, is that silver or white, or is it like a bronze color? Or some of these colors on the first floor more bronze, which would also maybe complement the Core 10 steel planters, maybe as far as just color scheme that could kind of complement the original body of the building a little bit more. And like I said, I do think that there might be some interest in seeing what a slender column would look like if it has somewhat of an arched capital. Well, not even so much of a capital, but just opening space. And there's some really contemporary buildings that also have those slender column looks with arches as well. Some of the Japanese architects have done that, such as Toyo Ito, which is kind of an interesting precedent to think about how that kind of historic look can also be very contemporary as well. Because I'm sure part of this is also just to give a new face to the building and a new face to the brand. So, something I think to consider.
I appreciate your comments, but we really studied a lot of schemes.
Okay.
A lot, and this was the one the bank really liked, and we really liked as well.
Okay.
Any other comments?
I just had one question on, the staff has made a recommendation to shift the south line of the south planters 3 feet to widen that sidewalk. Is that something you guys are okay with? Do you want to? Okay.
Yeah, we're fine with that.
Okay.
Are there any comments from the audience? I too want to echo the committee members' comments of the fact that this is very exciting, and I think it's been beautifully executed. I realize that there's nuances that we're all going to discuss and comment on, and you're going to provide feedback. I actually, we're going to have differences in opinion. I see the columns as the right proportion. I think that your perspective, because it's turned sideways, is showing the full face of two facades, and it's actually making these look thicker than whenever they're viewed from straight on, which might be the study that you were talking about. Just the perspectives, I think, are a little bit deceiving as to what might or might not be occurring. I actually like the fact that this went back to a real orthogonal scheme, even though it's different than the original. I like the way that you've detailed it, and I like the proportions. I have two questions. One is in regard to the mesh at the top. I didn't see anything about percentage of opening or shape of hole. And if that is in the, I might have missed that, but has that been studied, thought about? There's a question about color, and color, percentage of opening, and shape is going to dramatically change how that is read, especially from a great distance. And what might look very dense in our hands could be entirely invisible in a specific color or a specific density of hole. So has that been studied yet? Okay.
Other than just initial study.
Sure.
What's available, and we
Could you come up to the microphone, please? I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yeah, there was a representative sample of the
Right.
overall look of the panel.
I just didn't know it.
We would love enough flexibility from you guys to allow us to complete the study. I mean, we have a gut feel that on top of a 36-story building, it's going to be something entirely different. So we're totally going to put up test panels and view it. It may be transparent on the ground and look opaque at the top, or it may be opaque at the ground and transparent.
And I've had both surprises, and especially when you turn on this angle, the depth of the panel can be such that if it's turned a certain way, it could become an entirely opaque panel and an entirely different look, especially how the light. So I was just going to say that if that could be studied, and if it needs to come back or could be developed with staff.
If it's other than, they have presented like a basis of design material.
Okay.
If after the studies it is different than that, they'll come back.
I think that it should be studied, and you should feel comfortable with the final look.
Absolutely. We aren't going to make the decision without seeing some of it up there.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's fine. My only other comment is in regards to your synthetic plank that is being
geolam.
used, the geolam, for some of the lower features. I see that you're cladding, which is going to put it on a vertical surface, and sometimes that, especially depending on the surface that's behind it and how it is constructed, it can get very hot, and that geolam material, the polymers, can start to really warp. In certain applications, that's not a big deal, but on the scale of some of these features you're talking about putting it on, is there has the detailing yet been resolved to make sure that those panels stay straight and true and as intended on their original design? And if not, could it be done so?
It has not. We have used GLM before with great success, and there's vetting that still needs to happen, right?
Absolutely.
And so if we find out that it's not a good product to use, we'll go back to staff, and they'll decide whether this can be an administrative change or if it's something they want to run back by you guys. And so there's this level of trust that exists here that an owner-occupied building they want it more desperately to be just right than any of the rest of us, and they're keeping that on us to make sure it's done right. And so we're as desperate for it to be just right as you are.
Thank you.
I appreciate the comments. They're really good.
Well, we do appreciate this. This is going to be just one more great improvement to the downtown area, so thank you very much.
Okay, so as not the architect on this panel, I'll just say I'm so excited and relieved that you guys are going to make this your new home. And I think the design is great. I think it's going to really look better than it ever has. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump in and start the motions, if that's okay. And I'm sorry, are there any other? Okay, I'd like to go ahead and move that we approve the application on the basis that the project complies with the regulations and guidelines of the Downtown Design District Zoning Ordinance as referenced in Section C and D of the staff report, with conditions that the applicant moves the planters adjacent to the south property line a minimum of 3 feet to the north, and that the applicant receives a variance from the maximum sign area regulations for option 2.
Second.
It's a Kriegel Bates motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, and then I'd like to make a second motion that we provide a recommendation of approval to the Board of Adjustment for a variance from the maximum sign area regulations.
Second.
It's a Kriegel Bates motion. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Okay, next item on our agenda is item number 7, which is other business. Item A has been withdrawn, so we have items B and C. Are there any comments on items B or C? And we have no motion or anything on them?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
So the CE, the second CE.
Oh,
Are
the
you gonna present
974?
Do you wish to present, or do we have any motion on them? or any action?
I know we were looking at each other, I was like, did I write that or did she write that? This is for closing easements around 2 blocks. One is the Omni Hotel site, and the other is the site directly east, which will be a parking garage with a mixed-use housing wrap on it.
Okay.
Several, someone, representative of the applicant is here. When the new boulevard has been, it's been constructed, and where it is where it is, that resulted in some leftover right-of-way that these 2 blocks could grab for their use. The Omni, in the design that came a couple months ago, they were assuming, they already knew that. It wasn't clear to staff at the time that was the case, but they were already planning on using that extra right-of-way. And then the garage multi-use site needs some more dimension for their project. So, and there's no other use for it. There's no other use for it. The boulevard doesn't need it. These sites do need it. So, Emily, do you have anything else to add?
Thanks, Lisa. Hi, I'm Emily Pomeroy with the Center for Economic Development Law on behalf of the applicant, Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority. I don't have much to add to what Lisa said, but I'm happy to try to address any questions. The application comes before you pursuant to the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Law. The Quarter Shore Urban Renewal Plan allows for the vacation of streets, and because this is excess property due to the right-of-way formation of the new boulevard, it's an opportunity to meet the needs of Omni for the development of the hotel. And we have a conditional designation for a developer on the adjacent block, so we're just endeavoring to consolidate the best possible development site for them.
So the committee is being asked to make a recommendation to the Planning Commission.
This doesn't change the property line, correct?
It would ultimately change the property line once it gets through our process.
So,
So the thing I have outlined in red
yep,
is the area to be vacated, and then their property line would ultimately be that.
The hotel site was also, buildings are required to be at or within 10 feet of the right-of-way. The hotel project was already greater than that because they wanted to leave as much room as possible for the drop-off and the patio and the walkway on the north side. So they won't, the hotel site won't need to change anything about their site development. The new building on the east side will probably be using the new property line to mark off their at or within 10 feet.
okay. And that has not come
It has not
to
come.
us yet?
No.
I guess my only question would be, I'm assuming this is something that the city maybe has already studied, but just how wide that street is, if there's any plans to ever put additional things like bike lanes or things like that, because once you give it the property fully to the owner, then there won't be a possibility to change that. So I don't know if there would be a bike lane or not, but I'm just thinking, like, is that street, like, you'd never want to change.
Are you talking about the boulevard or?
Well, not the boulevard itself, but is there a side lane here, like in front of the building, right? Maybe I'm.
No, that's the boulevard.
Okay, so
So you have the original Interstate 40, which had, and 3rd Street was on the south side. And so when 40 went away, you literally have that entire right-of-way of both of those that are combined. So the Boulevard project, which DOT is finishing up and the city has reviewed,
Yeah.
when it's finished, that is what the plan is for that area. So this is extra. They're not planning on using it at all.
Okay.
I have a hesitation with the development, the site on the east side of Broadway. I know that the design is not done or presented or anything like that, but what's shown here pushes the sidewalk up against the boulevard, which there is a buffer there. I assume those are tree planters along the boulevard. I understood the reasoning for, at the Omni, to push the sidewalk out as far as the functionality of the drop-off and the area that's needed there. I don't see a reason right now to give that property to the development on the east side of Broadway, because when I look at that lot, I actually would prefer that sidewalk to come off of the boulevard, considering the traffic that's going to be there.
You want to ensure that there's kind of this maximum zone between the edge of the boulevard and the building.
If this area in red is given to that development, that leads to a solution that puts the sidewalk close to the boulevard. And I don't think that's the right solution.
And I know the dimensions are hard to see, that's why I had to look. Granted, we haven't seen this, but the dimension that they're showing from the back of the tree planters to the southern side of the sidewalk is 10 feet. And I just wanted to add that to the conversation. So
This footprint, Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, the conceptual footprint, as far as I'm aware, it is the conceptual footprint, and they are not planning, as far as I understand, to put the new building right up at zero on the new property line, because it's a pretty dense development. They need a lot of pedestrian circulation space.
That's true, and that's actually also true for the Omni site, because they will, the improvements that will be made in the right-of-way that's being proposed to be vacated are not, are non-structural, meaning there's a landscape retaining wall and nothing that would prevent the city from accessing easements that must be maintained through that property, and that will be the same for the block to the east. And of course, we'll obligate, the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority will be deeding the property to the developer on the eastern block, and we'll ensure that its build line works with the Omni site.
Right, and I don't think anything about this puts the committee in a bind on the dimensions or design of the streetscape frontage.
Because it hasn't come before us yet.
Well, it hasn't come before you, and wherever the property line is, the developer is still going to be required to improve it out to the curb line.
Right.
And we're still going to evaluate that.
I'm not suggesting this is going to happen, but if this is given to the developer, there are utility lines, existing utility lines. I don't want to end up in a situation where this area is given to the developer and the footprint of the development changes and extends to that line, because that would pinch the pedestrian experience up against the boulevard. So this may have been mentioned already, but what's the advantage of deeding this right-of-way to the developer versus giving them variances to develop in the right-of-way?
I think the primary issue is it's a bit of a no man's land. And our effort in including both blocks was just to be as, efficient as possible with your time and the resources available to the Oklahoma City Urban Renewal Authority. The proposed ordinance on the eastern block reserves all of the easements that are currently there, which is necessary because we don't yet know the development that's proposed there. I do think that there's the need, as Lisa mentioned there, we must maintain the access for those easements. So that wouldn't be anything that the Urban Renewal Authority, as the grantor of the property, would trample on.
Right, and there are, that reminds me, there are some significant utilities still in that area, so you can't build over them to some extent.
Unless you reroute those utilities, and it's your land.
But if there was an easement in place, then I guess that would force the building not to build a permanent structure in that zone. But they could do like landscaping and things?
I'm sorry?
Are you suggesting that the build to line would remain the same and that they can just do temporary structures and things in this red zone that you have?
I'm saying the build-to line could conceptually change. It hasn't, and if it is proposed to change, the committee would...
Well, and let me just clarify. If the property line moves, which when something is vacated, then the property line moves, the build-to line is 10 foot from the property line.
But you could insist on an easement and also change...
In which case, then they would have to go through the process everybody else has to, because they obviously can't build on it, so they would need a variance. Is that what you were asking?
Yeah, but just, I guess, pretty much.
I'm not clear of the scope of the approval when Omni was before you a couple months ago. You had said that it assumed that the property line would be at this...
They had to get we assumed that, see that red line that Laura has her hand on right now?
Yeah.
We assumed that was the legal property line.
Okay.
Apparently, they were assuming that the that the outbound line was
That
their
this
property
vacation
line.
process was complete.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. They still had to get a variance from the setback because they wanted to be further back.
And that was
We're
based
allowed
on the original property line, not
Yeah,
this
they got a
proposed one.
variance from being back from the original property line.
Okay,
So which is, which
Right.
they're even more, they would be even further back from
Right.
the new property line.
which, as I understand it, is because of the drive that's required at the front along the boulevard, right, that required
Right,
their
and
the drop.
the concept design that was in the newspaper for Boulevard Place showed their drop-off off the boulevard, too.
Right,
Oh, is this Boulevard?
yes.
Okay, sorry.
So just one more point that might address what you raised. The proposed ordinance for this vacation does grant specific easements for a relocated gas line. So Omni is required to relocate the gas line, but part of it still runs through the vacated, should this be vacated, through the vacated portion of the property. And an easement is specifically granted. And that's the part where no structural improvements could be built.
And I know you've referenced this, but just to, I guess, beat a dead horse, the drawing shows what looks to be a water line and a gas line on the north side of the east development. So there are easements in place for those currently.
Correct. And they will be reserved.
Okay. Just to come full circle on my comments, I think there are hurdles, be it our review of the development and those easements in place that would be stopgaps to somebody building out to that line, which, again, is just my personal opinion on the subject.
I've actually had a couple of conditions in which we've dealt with this similarly in ODOT right-of-way and excess right-of-ways, and for clients who are trying to capture spaces, and it's always been pursuing it. I had not ever looked at it from this side. I actually, this is the street is intended to be a slowed vehicle street, and I think that widening things out and doing a bunch of things to make it further away from the street is going to make the street, people on the street in their vehicles feel like it's comfortable to drive faster. I kind of like a little tighter downtown area where people slow their cars down a lot. So I can see both sides. I think that having the fact that the easements are there and they don't look like they're going to go away anytime soon makes that build-to line really pretty solid for today and financially for a developer in the future. Do we need a recommendation? Do I need a motion for a recommendation?
Yes.
May I have one?
I'll move to provide a recommendation of approval to the Planning Commission for the request to close the portion of the right-of-way for Southwest 3rd Street between South Robinson Avenue and South Broadway Avenue and between South Broadway Avenue and E.K. Gaylord Boulevard.
I'll second that.
That is a Bates, Richards motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh. Hello. I've come down to present, exactly, Lisa Cronister, Planning Department. We have, staff has been working to compile this ordinance that touches several different subjects,
for updates to the Downtown Design Review Ordinance. And we're presenting this to you and asking for your recommendation to Planning Commission so it can continue on its path to being adopted. This ordinance covers several different items. One, you may remember 2 years ago we began a process to do some outreach about possible amendments to the Cottage District. We had a big kickoff meeting in the Civic Center that some of you may have attended. We had a lot of stakeholder outreach. I'll get into more about that in a minute. So this is the ordinance that captures the changes that were agreed to out of that effort. We also did some work on Automobile Alley, specifically about whether or not the Automobile Alley guidelines for the next century, if and how they were ever adopted. We couldn't find records of that. But if we were going to adopt them, so should we? Do they need to be updated? And what do we need to consider in that adoption? So this ordinance will address that. Staff keeps a running list of things we identify throughout the years and on various cases that are confusing or causing trouble for applicants, causing trouble for staff. So we've incorporated some of those into this. Then there's leftover language from previous ordinance amendments that never got struck that has caused confusion for years. We're trying to take care of that too. And some of that includes moving many of the fence regulations to guidelines. A lot of applicants have come in requesting variances for our unusually detailed fence regulations. The fence regulations are difficult to assess, they're difficult to enforce, and they cause a lot of problems for applicants because they basically dictate one type of fence. But we'll get into that a little more. So those are the overarching things we're trying to capture. Cottage District, because of the ongoing development activity in the Cottage District in the last, for sure 5 years, various stakeholder groups asked us to look at what does that mean in the context of Plan OKC, in the context of the Downtown Development Framework. We had big stakeholder meetings, we had small stakeholder meetings, we had one-on-one stakeholder meetings. Sarah Welch with our office led most of that effort. And so all that wrapped up at the end of last summer, if anybody came to our big meeting at the library. And so the result of all that work was that, yes, the Downtown Development Framework should be adopted by reference in the code. This body and several of the other design review commissions have already adopted it as a resource, but we're going to actually put the reference in the code to make it easier for property owners and applicants and designers to know that the resource is applicable. The one thing in the Cottage District Code, and to back up, so the Urban Design Commission reviews cases in the Cottage District, but it reviews them according to regulations and guidelines in Section 7200, which is the Downtown Code. So that's why you may not be as familiar with those sections, but they are in the Downtown Ordinance. So there's been a long time requirement for the ground floor to be at 24 inches above grade. That was originally in an effort to respect the cottage style that was the original style in the district. Since the district has turned to a more contemporary development, the preference is for those property owners that the first floor not be raised, and that is how the Urban Design Commission has practiced for many years. So this guideline, everyone agreed in the outreach, needed to just go away, that it didn't apply anymore. Changing many of the fence regulations. Like I said, the regulations for front yard fences, it specifies the picket width, the spacing between the pickets, and we have a lot of applicants say, well, why can't we just use perforated panels? Why can't we just use mesh? why can't we use a different spacing of picket? And we have approved, this body has approved many projects that do that, and there's a lot of good reasons to allow flexibility. So we've just simply taken most of the regulations, basically anything having to do with material and openness requirement, and put it to guidelines. Because the point, and what will remain as regulations, is the height. So, for example, the height for front yard fences is 4 feet. That will remain, and the intent will remain that it be somewhat open, but there's just a lot more flexibility on how you achieve that openness. This comes up, I think, mainly in downtown a lot for, it gets mixed up with the dumpster enclosure issue. So we're just moving what it says about fences now to guidelines. We're also adding language that specifically states staff can do administrative approvals in the cottage district. This came up last year on some cases. The ordinance says downtown staff may issue AAs in downtown, and it says Urban Design Commission staff may issue AAs in urban design districts, but it does not say specifically that downtown staff can issue, that Urban Design Commission staff can issue CAs in downtown areas. There's a lot of reasons to allow some threshold of administrative approval, but for the last year, we have not issued any administrative approvals in the cottage district because of some ambiguity on whether or not we were empowered to do that. So we're proposing to add that. So that's cottage district.
Does that mean everything was coming across UDC?
Yes.
Every application?
Yep. And there really haven't been that many. Automobile Alley. So the Automobile Alley Association and business owners asked us to look at incorporating the Automobile Alley guidelines for the next century into the ordinance, or to adopt them by reference. But first we took a step back and said, well, how do those guidelines differ from the downtown development framework? How do they differ from the building conservation guidelines? The idea being maybe everything that's required has already been covered. And we found that is true, that a lot of the Automobile Alley guidelines for the next century talk about respecting historic fabric in terms of not painting brick, preserving character-defining elements. All of that is covered in the building conservation guidelines, which this body adopted many years ago, adopted as a supplemental guideline. So now we're proposing to actually write it into the code that it has been adopted. So there'll be a section, if you're an applicant or an owner, designer, you go to the section and it will say, the committee hereby adopts the building conservation guidelines and the downtown development framework. So one area that the Automobile Alley guidelines addressed that conflicted with provisions in the other references was building height. The Automobile Alley guidelines say that new buildings shouldn't be more than a certain threshold above the existing building, which is usually no more than one more story above the next building. But the regulations, the base regulations, say there is no maximum building height, and the downtown development framework encourages more density on Broadway. So what's the right path? So through some outreach and workshop with the Automobile Alley Association, everyone agreed they'd like to define a different maximum building height in two areas along Broadway. So this red line here is drawn on 6th Street. So the maximum height above 6th Street would be 80 feet, which is about the height of some of the tallest red brick buildings. And then below 6th Street, the maximum height would be 140 feet. So that recognizes that the southern portion of Automobile Alley is more a transition to the central business district, but that above 6th Street, the heights will respect the historic core, so that we won't have anything really unusually tall between 6th and 13th, 6th and 11th.
The recent proposal for the 7-story building between 5th and 6th on the east side of Broadway?
It is 110 feet.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, this will not result in any nonconformities, which was another reason all those thresholds were set. So that is a significant change. Everybody felt it was the right way to go, because right now in the ordinance, there is no maximum building height on Broadway. General downtown language, there's miscellaneous stuff that staff deals with every day, like the expiration date information is located in a completely bizarre location in the code. It's really hard to find. Even we struggle with finding where it is located. There was some ambiguity on whether or not chain link fencing was allowed on street frontages. The intent has clearly been that it's not, and that's how we've practiced. We talked about changing the detailed fence regulations to guidelines, and there's a old reference to the streetscape master plan that was intended to be deleted in a previous ordinance amendment, and it never was, because this does not exist anymore. We don't reference it. We use the downtown development framework. Urban design changes, just kind of for your information, it's all in this ordinance. Many years ago, Paseo, the heart of Paseo, the commercial district, was reviewed by the HP Commission, and it was changed to review by the Urban Design Commission. And when that was done, the ordinance did not delete all of the language meant for HP Commission. So now there are duplicate and erroneous guidelines for that area, that every time something comes through, we have to sort out what is legally required. But it was intended to be deleted, the old language, so we're proposing to finally do that, hopefully, in this. So our next steps, we're presenting it to Downtown Design Review Committee. Next week, we'll present it to the Urban Design Commission. We presented an informational presentation to them at their July meeting. Then we will start our Planning Commission hearings. So any questions?
I don't have any questions. I just want to say thanks. Thank you guys for doing this. I mean, it's an effort to make things better, make the process better, make all the guidelines and regulations better. So
we hope so. We hope we haven't inadvertently caused another problem. But yes, if you're wondering what staff does in their spare time, this is what we do in our spare time.
With respect to Automobile Alley, it's been a very long time coming. It's been difficult to be on both sides of this horseshoe, so I'm glad that it's at least getting, if not fully, very, very close to fully resolved. We need a recommendation on this?
Yes, we're asking for a recommendation to Planning Commission.
I would move to recommend approval of this ordinance to the Planning Commission.
I will second that.
Is a Bates-Richards motion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is communications. We have several items under communication reports, actually almost 19 of them. Are there any comments from staff? It has been a very busy month. Any comments from staff or any comments regarding them? Comments from Planning Department staff?
We have a meeting next month. please check your calendars to make sure you can come, and we'll check with the other two members, and hopefully we'll have another one.
Yeah, well, what's the date?
Oh, I'm sorry, the date is September the,
Yeah, can everyone check while you're sitting here?
yes, the 20th, because, as we know, this is the third month in a row we've only had 4, and so it's, okay, we got a thumbs up from Corey. Okay, we have 2 of those. I don't know, I'm looking.
I'm any day.
Okay, Deborah thinks, yes, okay. What was that? Okay, so we have, okay, thank you so much. We have, oh, that's right, I'm sorry. So we'll see you next,
I'll be here in October.
okay.
We got to get some more people here.
Any comments from committee members?
We're still looking for one more slot, right?
Yes, we're still looking for Connie's.
Okay.
And Chuck is still on the commission, but his term expired in May. So he would like to move on.
Comments from committee?
Do we have applications, or do we need to?
Yeah, we have applications. We've submitted nominations to the mayor's office. We just haven't heard of their appointment.
Great.
Any other comments? Okay, our next meeting date's the 20th. We do have a meeting, and we're adjourned.